Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church Stony Stratford, and we're going to be taking a short break from our messages in Luke's Gospel, and in Advent and the run-up to Christmas, we're going to be looking at John chapter 1 verses 1 to 18. And I'm going to read the first 5 verses. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. When I was studying at theological college, I remember reading a rather large book called Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology. And it dealt with basically everything you could think of, all the doctrines. So it was really important that it had an index. And in that index, you get the chapters and you get the themes of the chapters. Now that's what we got at the start of John's Gospel in the first 18 verses. Really, John is flagging up his themes. And his first concern is, who is Jesus? And the first thing he tells us is that Jesus is God. And more than that, God has spoken. He is God's message to us. Later in verse 14, we didn't read that, but it's worth looking at the first part. It says this: the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Seeing we've been told that the Word was with God in the beginning and it was God, this is about the coming of Jesus Christ into the world. And as he is entitled or called the Word, then it tells us that he's not just a messenger, but he is actually God coming in person with his message. The literal translation, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise, is God was the Word. That's how it literally interprets in Greek. It tells us, just in case we doubted he was God, he was active in creation. All things were made through him. And then it tells us something quite extraordinary. In verse 4 it says this: in him was life, and that life was the light of men. Light and life really go together, but both are essential. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I worked away from home. And where I worked, there was a main house and there was a cottage which I resided in. And it was way out in the country. And, most of the time walking from the cottage from the big house was no problem. But on a moonless night, you really noticed the difference. You wanted light. You needed a torch to see the path. Otherwise, you're going to probably walk into a tree or something. So Jesus is the light. And more than that, he gives life. These things will be a major theme in the rest of John's Gospel. But more than that, it is a light that cannot be overcome. Verse 5, the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. I use the word overcome because if you look in the footnotes of the NIV or any other Bible, you often find these are reversed. It actually mentions that it can be rendered in the Greek as overcome. The Greek word actually gives scope to mean both things. You see, this is the thing. Some people look at Jesus, they can read the Bible, but it doesn't really get in here. It doesn't get into the heart. What John is challenging his readers to do is to understand who Jesus is, because we need light and we need life, spiritual life. Life gives clarification, doesn't it? So why should we trust Jesus? Why should we believe that he is the light? Well, quite simply because he does not change and God's word does not change. In the book of Hebrews and chapter 13 and verse 8, it says this: Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today and forever. In other words, Christ's light is not diminished. It does not fade. It remains the same. Now that's a wonderful message when we live in a troubled world, when we come up to Christmas. It's good, isn't it, to have time together, but it's even better to remember who Jesus is and the light and life that he brings. If you're interested, at the front of the church, we've got these in the holders, The Real Christmas. It's about a 10-minute read, and it will clear up a lot of stuff. If you're confused about Jesus, if you're confused about the Christmas message, well, stick with us and listen to the rest of these messages, but read that book as well. It's completely free, or if you're further away, just drop me an email or something. My emails are available on the website, and I'll post it to you free of charge. Thank you so much for listening.